Want to stay in temple lodgings with Buddhists? Take part in morning prayers? Then what better place than the birthplace of Shingon Buddhism, Koyasan? If you're planning on a trip to Japan, and especially if you're thinking about going to Osaka, then why not plan an overnight stay in Koyasan? Escape the city and experience life in this deeply historic village, which will give you a sense of peace and serenity. In this video, I'm going to be talking you through the Koyasan World Heritage Ticket, which you need to purchase to be able to get on the cable car and also use the bus in the village, as well as share with you our experience of staying in a temple lodgings. And also I'll give you some little tips around what I would do if I was to go again. As with all my videos, I'll also be sharing how much it all cost. So let's jump in. The reason that we were in Koyasan for the night is actually because we were on a wider 15-day trip of Japan. And we landed into Tokyo airport and we then got the Shinkansen to Osaka. And if you want to learn more about how the JR Pass works, which is what we used to travel on the Shinkansen or the bullet train, then the video will be there. And we also then stayed in Kyoto for 4 nights after Osaka. And I've also created a video for that there. Koyasan was not the only trip that we did to the mountains. We actually went into the Japanese Alps and we stayed in Takayama, which is an Edo period city. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, then you've got a video on that too. And then also where we stayed in Osaka, it was the Riga Royal Hotel. I've done a review of that hotel. They were super friendly and it was really good because we booked 1 night there, 1 night in the mountains, and then we came back to the same hotel, and it was just, we knew where we were going. The staff already had our suitcases. It was super friendly. So there's a video there. I do new travel videos every Monday, and if you'd like to be notified when they come out, then please hit the subscribe button below. All of the information in this video is from our travels in September 2023. So why should you visit Koyasan? Koyasan, or also known as Mount Koya, is a 900-meter high mountain, which is surrounded by 8 peaks. The 8 peaks are thought to represent the different 8 petals of a lotus in bloom, which is suggestive of a core of a mandala with its 8 deities arranged on the 8 petals of a lotus and with a central Buddha at the center of the lotus. Koyasan is the center of Shingon Buddhism, as this is where the teachings were established in Japan back in 806, back when Kyoto was the capital of Japan. Here's a bit of history for you. In the year 804, Kobo Daeshi crossed the sea to China in the search of Buddhist teachings, and in the capital of the Tang dynasty in China, he received the full transmission of the lineage of Buddhism, relatively unknown in Japan of his day. It was called Shingon Buddhism, and he returned to Japan, and in 806 he began teaching. In 816, he was granted permission from the imperial court to build a monastic complex deep in the mountains at Koyasan, isolated from the capital and its distractions. Kobo Daeshi lived and taught at Koyasan for many years until he finally entered into an internal meditation in 835. His statue attracts countless number of pilgrims each year. How do you get to Koyasan from Osaka? So the way we got there was by using the Koyasan World Heritage Ticket. So this was the ticket that we bought at Namba Station, and just before we actually wanted to get on the train, so we didn't need to book in advance. The cost was £22 each, as we bought the limited express version. You can actually buy them online, but it's a digital ticket rather than a physical one, and that does mean you can't use the express service. You can buy the paper ticket from over Nankai railway stations. I've actually put all the details in the description below. There's a link to a really helpful website that we used when we were planning this trip. So the ticket includes the train that gets you to the end of the line, and then it also includes the cable car, which takes you up the mountain to Koyasan. Then you also get 2 days worth of bus journeys around the village. So it's absolutely perfect for people who do want to stay overnight in temple lodgings. And also it's worth mentioning that when you arrive, you have to get the bus to get out of the train station. There isn't a pedestrian route to the train station. So yeah, you've got to make sure you use the bus. You'll also get discount vouchers for some of the shops to use in the villages, and also some of the attractions. I've actually managed to get an English version of this, so I've put a link to the description below as well, so you can have a look at some of the discounts and the map, and it has some tourist attractions on there as well for you. I do recommend staying overnight, so it means that you will get the full experience. Some of the sites do get very busy, and there's a lot of coach trips that come to the village just for the day. So when you stay overnight, you get the benefit of being able to go to some of these places and really experience the serenity and peace. I wish actually we'd arrived a little bit earlier on the day that we went up the mountain. I think we got the train at around 3 o'clock. So by the time we got to our accommodation, we literally had half an hour before it was time for dinner at 6. That also meant that there was some walking tours or activities we could have booked, but they needed to be booked before 6 p.m. the day before, and so we missed out on that opportunity. So personally, I would have arrived earlier if I was going to go again. Let's talk about the temple lodgings we stayed in. The Japanese word Shukubo means sleeping with the monks, and Shukubo is an accommodation experience in which travellers lodge within a Buddhist temple. And what really appealed to us about this was the type of accommodation, that it would be so peaceful, very different to anything else from the rest of our trip in Japan. There was a lot of cities, a lot of staying above train stations, and so yeah, we were really excited for this complete variance. There are a total of 52 lodgings to choose from in the village of Koyasan, and we stayed at the Daimyo'o-in Temple. We stayed for one night, and the accommodation includes vegetarian evening meal and also morning prayer ceremony and then breakfast as well. The total cost for one night was £170, and I've put a link in the description below to the actual accommodation we stayed in. When we first arrived, what we noticed was there was these internal gardens. It was very quiet. The first thing you need to do is take off your shoes and put slippers on. And we were greeted and shown a map of the lodgings, where we were shown that there's bathrooms that were downstairs, and these are bathrooms that all residents within the lodgings are using. But I think there was maybe about 5 or 6 couples there when we were staying. And then also we got shown where the onsen was, which is basically a hot bath that you can use, which has got a constant stream of water, and it was in a stone floor bath. Men and women have to use this separately in separate spaces. And then we were shown up to our room, and wow, like the thing that just blew us away was the garden. This was just gorgeous. Like, it was actually exactly what I was expecting. I don't know if you've ever watched Kill Bill, where Uma Thurman is fighting with Lucy Liu, and they're in that Japanese garden, and there's the sound of the water feature, the wooden water feature, just continually dropping every couple of seconds with some water, and it's silent, but it's beautiful. And this is exactly what this garden was like. There was the huge carp swimming in the pool, and everything from this whole lodging was looking into this garden. So we were actually on the first floor, and our room was overlooking the gardens. There were sliding doors to get in. You obviously have to take your slippers off before you enter the room, and there's mats on the floor. And then you have 2 single beds that you sleep in. This did really feel special. We found ourselves drawn and sitting in the window, just looking out. Pretty much most of the time we were in the room. So once we arrived, we were given a tea and biscuit. But then shortly after, it was time for dinner. So 6 p.m. dinner is served, and we were brought downstairs to where we have our own private dining space overlooking the gardens. There are 2 trays of food. All of them were vegetarian dishes, including vegetable tempura, tofu, rice, and a sweet dessert. It was quite filling. At first, I was a little bit worried that I wasn't going to be full from this meal, and there wasn't really many options around to go and get food anywhere else, but I was so full, I didn't need anything else. And then we also were served some Japanese tea, so we actually took that and sat on one of the benches overlooking the garden into the evening. Then the next morning, the morning prayer ceremony started at 7 a.m. Now, there's no footage of this because we're not allowed to take photos or videos within the sacred space. You're kind of invited in to sit and witness the Buddhist monks practicing their morning prayers, and you're invited up to drop some dust into, I think it was like a vase full of incense or an urn, and then we were all given a small amulet, which was to kind of keep us safe, and there was best wishes from the monks. After that, then it was time for breakfast, and this was served at 7:50 a.m, and this was again on trays in the same room that we had dinner in, overlooking the garden, and again with more Japanese tea. It was all vegetarian, and it did feel a little bit strange for me personally having rice for breakfast. I've never had that before, but I was, again, satisfied and full, so I can't complain. So after that, we then checked out of our accommodation, but we left our bags there, and then we made our way to explore some of the sites. The first place we went to was the Okunoin Cemetery. So this is the resting place of Kobayashi and the founder of the Shingon Buddhism. His mausoleum is in this cemetery, and instead of having died, it's believed that Kobayashi has actually gone to rest in eternal meditation as he awaits the new Buddha of the future. And this provides relief to people who come to ask for salvation in the meantime. This was a beautiful place, and I'm not usually one for exploring cemeteries. I find it sometimes a bit morbid, but this was very different. It was very light. The forest it was surrounded by with the huge trees. I can't explain to you like how grand these trees were. Here's a picture of Ed hugging one of them just so you can get a sense of the size. It was very peaceful, and when we were there at around 9 a.m, there wasn't really anybody there yet. There was a couple of tours that had just started, but we walked ahead of them, so we really got to experience it in a very peaceful, quiet way. And you'll notice that there's so many graves here. There's graves for companies even. I've heard that there's a termite company that exterminates termites, so they have a grave for the termites that they kill. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Also, you'll notice that some of these actual graves have bibs on, and I explained in my other video that these bibs are actually a way to warn off evil spirits that are put onto the statues that are on the graves. Once you've been walking and you carry on, you'll get to the Kobayashi Bridge. Now this is where you start to enter the resting place of Kobayashi, and so you're not allowed to take any pictures or videos past this bridge. What you will notice on the left is a group of wooden markers placed in a stream as a memorial to unborn children. When you actually cross this bridge, you should bow to Kobayashi before crossing. Once you've passed over the bridge, you'll then get to the Kngobu Temples shrine. Take a minute to just take it all in, really, and just absorb the space, the quietness. This is a very, very sacred space for people in Buddhism. And there is actually monks there that you can buy amulets from. There's lots of different amulets for different kind of goodwill or different safekeeping. When we turned back around and we left, it was actually quite momentous just to see these buildings that are surrounded by these huge trees, and it's been there for hundreds of years. We then wandered into the Okunoin Temple, which is actually a tea place. There was free tea that was being served. So we were invited in by the monk, and then we were able to pour our own tea out of these massive vats, and we sat down and listened to the monk talking to us. He was talking obviously in Japanese, so we had our Google Translate out on our phone, and it was working pretty well to actually pick up patches of what they were saying. And the gist of the story that the monk was sharing was around his fear of climbing Mount Fuji, and the fear becoming so big that he was wishing he injured himself or something would happen to stop him from getting up there. And the kind of climbing and conquering that fear and recognizing even if you didn't get to the top, it was okay, because it wasn't about reaching the top, it was about the experience of it. And there was just something really beautiful about sitting in that temple, having free tea, just listening to that monk share his story, and being part of that with some of the pilgrims that were there. So there is some research online which says about coming to this place at night, but it's a very different experience. There may not be all the halls that are open, so it's just bearing in mind that you'll have to be respectful if you are there as well, because it is a graveyard. So after this, we actually jumped on the bus and we went to the opposite side of Koyasan, so we went to the Daimon Gate. Now, this is symbolising the entrance to Koyasan, and it's the gateway, really, into the village. It was rebuilt in 1705 and is 25 metres tall. We actually, when we got off the bus, I went over the road first because you can see from the opposite side of the street some of the peaks or the mountains in the mountainous region. It was absolutely beautiful. So after we went through the gate, we then went down back into the village. We then went to have lunch at Kadohama Goma-tofu. Now, we just stumbled across this place, actually. It was just down on our way to the next temple we wanted to visit, and it was a tofu restaurant. The staff was super friendly, And the menu, I think we picked the 9 mini dishes each. There was 2 separate ones we ordered and we were sharing. I also had a really tasty matcha tea as well. They actually sold lots of sweets. People were going in there to buy cakes, but we were so full we couldn't eat anything else. And for the both of us, the total cost of the meal was £27, which is very reasonable. We then visited the Danjo Garan complex. So first of all, walking through the central gate, and then actually we turned right and went over into the little garden to come back around again, which was very beautiful. We were also lucky enough to be there to witness the donging of the bell at the bell tower, and this happens every 30 minutes. And as with quite a few large temple sites in Japan, they have places where you can get an inscription from the temple monks. Now, the book you use for these inscriptions is called Goshini Choi, and it shouldn't have any other stamps from like tourist attractions, train stations, or government buildings. These books are meant to be sacred and only for temple inscriptions. So they do actually sell them in the shops at some of the temples as well, but if you do present them with a book and they can see there's a tourist stamp, they will refuse to give you an inscription. So when you're leaving the site, we actually walked down Kngobu. As down that street there was lots of beautiful trees, and actually some of them were starting to turn the leaves a little bit red as we were there in September, so we were hoping we were going to start to see some red leaves, and we managed to here in the village. And then after that, we went to visit the Kngobu Temple and rock gardens. We actually used our 20% discount voucher from the booklet that we got when we bought our heritage ticket. And I think it was only about a couple of pounds to enter and explore. It was quite interesting to have a look around some of the rooms. The rock gardens were very beautiful, and there was this grand hall where we were able to go in, and again there was free tea and a gift shop, so we bought a couple of amulets for family and friends for good luck. And then after that we headed back to our accommodation to collect our bags, and then it was time for us to get the bus back to the train station and then the cable car back down to Osaka. So overall, I feel like that this was a really good experience personally. Me and Ed had looked online, we'd seen on YouTube about this before we went, so we knew it was definitely something we wanted to do, and it was just so peaceful. And I think having been in Japan maybe 4 or 5 days at this point, it was a real nice peaceful time for us to just kind of reconnect with where we were actually physically in our bodies, especially having got over the jet lag. So the spiritual significance of this place, you could just feel it. It was very much in the air. It was I can't describe it. It just made me feel peaceful and calm. So I personally would recommend staying in a Shukubo, a temple lodging with Buddhists. I really loved it. It's not for everybody. If you don't want to sleep on the floor on mats, then you may not enjoy this. And also, if you're not the kind of person that likes the calm and peace, then you may not also enjoy this as well. Like, be aware it's going to be a very calm, quiet place. There's not really anything to do in the evenings. There's nowhere to go. You just relax in the lodgings, really. So, like, there's no bars, there's no restaurants. Like, it's a very quiet village in the evening. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you do want to get that full experience. But again, like I said, I'd go a bit earlier on the first day. Don't get there just before you have to get there for your dinner in the first evening. So, as always, thanks for watching, and if you do have any comments, suggestions or questions, please put them below in the comments. I'll come back to you, and there'll be another travel video out on Monday. Bye.